Well, I welcome Casey and Jane and Meredith, and we're going to have a conversation about the spirituality of Mary. And I'm really appreciative to share this time with these women. And since we're moving into the Christmas season, and Mary is a big part of that story, I thought it would be really nice for us to be able to hear from people who have a strong affinity towards Mary and as part of their spirituality. So I'm going to have these three women introduce themselves, and then they'll share some thoughts to some of the questions I had. So Casey, let's begin with you as an introduction.
My name is Casey Dewitt, and I have been a member of ORUCC for 10 years, I believe. I was raised Catholic, fourth of five children. I went to St. John Vianney grade school from first to sixth grade. And when I was very young, we had all sorts of sisters and priests at the house, and they were just part of our everyday life. And I was taught by Dominican sisters in first through sixth grade. And I was born right at the end of Vatican II, which I can talk about a little bit later. So I think that shaped my theology of Mary a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Great. How about you, Jane?
I'm Jane Geyer, and I was raised Catholic, grade school, high school, and some college, and belonged to a church in Hell's Corners, St. Mary's. Raised there, and then was married there also. And then in Madison, my husband and I had belonged to Blessed Sacrament for a number of years. So raised our kids there.
And just when did you come to Orchard Ridge?
Oh, I'm sorry. In May of 2020. So I'm a newbie.
Yeah, so yes, welcome. Yeah, Jane and a number of other people joined the church on Zoom. So what a fun fact, huh, Jane?
Yes.
All right, Meredith?
Yeah, hi, I'm Meredith Tron, and I've been at Orchard Ridge, I think about 18 years. And I was raised Catholic, but I did not go to Catholic schools. In particular, my parents actually actively decided not to send us to Catholic schools because they felt like they didn't want us to be haughty or something. They had this association. But both my parents went to Catholic schools. And so for me, it was as much about sort of the Catholic culture and the identity. My dad was Irish, my mom was Polish and French. So it was a lot about church, in particular around the holidays and just the ritual of it. And my kids now don't understand that, like, for us, you had to go to church. Like, that was just, there wasn't a choice.
Right.
So just a different association with what church meant and the choice involved in it. But I think my kids have had a much different relationship with faith.
Yeah, maybe we'll probably get into that a little bit more in our questions. Thank you. All right, so I was thinking of your earlier years, your growing up years, and getting a little bit more traction there. So one of the questions I had was, sharing a memory or some thoughts you had of Mary when you were growing up, and then the people who were significant in your life who really influenced you, or you admired their sense of spirituality with Mary. So Meredith, can you go first with that and change up the order?
Sure, yeah, I'll try.
Yeah.
So, I think for me, Mary was just sort of this always present. So if you're in a Catholic church, right, there is always a statue of Mary up front. It's very much part of the prayers that you learn before you're confirmed, before your first communion. Mary is an equal in sort of, in my mind, in terms of who as a child I was taught to think about, to pray to guide me. And in terms of like who influenced me, I don't know, I can't really think of any person in particular other than just this idea of a maternal figure was part of what church meant. It wasn't just men, it was about loving kindness, sort of this idea that a mother-like person was part of who I would pray to, who I sought comfort from, who, I don't know. So the extension of that to the whole family versus like God or Jesus, it just felt more a broader definition of who was important in faith.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely. That's beautiful. How about you, Jane?
Uh, Pretty much, Meredith, I agree with all of that. She really, she was somebody you could go to. For me, as I got older with parenting issues, if I had trouble, concerns with the kids, and even now with the grandkids, I go to Mary.
Mhm.
Just because she's another woman and I just can relate to her much better than God sometimes. You know, she is more approachable, reachable. I go to bed, and if this was a very much my mother and mother-in-law would pray the rosary, and they always took the rosary to bed with them. That was just what you did. And I, to this day, have my mother's rosary in my nightstand. And when times get, a little questionable, I grab that rosary, and it's like a mantra,
Mhm.
and it puts me right to sleep. My worries go, and she's there. She's just, a comfort.
Yeah, I think and that's beautiful. You shared with me that your mom had a grotto in her backyard?
Yes,
And
yes, growing up.
you might need to explain what a grotto is, because some of us Protestants might not know.
Oh, okay. Well, so a grotto is ours was a wooden A-frame kind of little wooden grotto where Mary, the statue of Mary, stood in that grotto. And it was probably 4 feet high, and my mother received it from a Monsignor. And she had it for years and years.
Mhm.
And when she moved out of her home, she was wondering which one of her 5 girls was going to take the grotto. And so I ended up with the grotto. And now Mary is in my backyard, but the grotto kind of deteriorated over years. But she was always present in our yard. I mean, we put flowers in front of her, and it was just, she was there.
Uh-huh.
We used to joke about Our Lady of the Bathtub because you'd often see Mary with like an upside down bathtub and she was in it.
So did your mom go out there, Jane, a lot, or your parents when they were trying to connect, or not? Wasn't
Not really. I mean, it wasn't like, it was just her presence.
okay. Thank you.
Mhm. And planting flowers and,
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Casey, how about you growing up?
Yeah, I think I have a little different surprise, a little different take on Mary for me. My mom taught me the Hail Mary, and being at St. John's, we learned the Rosary and things like that. But Mary wasn't really, and I think it was because of this being post-Vatican II, and just the sisters who taught us were much more, not more, but we were interested in going through the changes that they were going through. So I have a little, what I was taught about Mary, somehow internalized, I should say. I probably wasn't taught this, but she was definitely intercessory. So if you didn't feel comfortable talking right to God, you could go to Mary. And Mary was much gentler, especially if you learned it in the Old Testament. She'll jump in there and she'll ask. In a way, it was very patriarchal for me. She'll ask Dad in a good way where you can get what you want that way. And so that never really sat with me very well, because I always said, well, I just go right to God. And so, but I have to tell you, this is a story that I thought of, and I don't know why I'm sharing it, because but my very first memory really of Mary was when I was in 2nd grade. Mrs. McQuaid read us the story. There's a story about 3 kids back in 1917 in Portugal who who saw in Fatima, who saw the Virgin Mary. The Virgin Mary appeared to her. So you'll hear that a lot, that the Virgin Mary will come down and meet with people and try to change the world through people. And she chose these 3 kids. And so she read us the story every day before lunch, and it scared me to, so I would just like always be afraid, because I had older siblings who used to always talk about ghosts and things like that. So I was afraid of Mary for a very long time, that she might appear to me, and I did not want that. It wasn't until I was probably in high school, I started a guitar choir, and we started to sing more songs about Mary, that I kind of relaxed a little bit about her. But really, that was my first, yes, I was afraid of her.
Yeah. Wow. Great. Have you, Jane or Meredith, had you heard stories like that of Virgin Mary visiting people? Or
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Isn't there a movie out, Fatima? Or,
Yeah, Our Lady of Fatima, I think. Yeah.
Oh.
I think it's supposed to be pretty good. I have not seen it.
I think of the fact that she appeared to children. That was just like, what?
Yeah. That's great. So yeah, sharing about how your spirituality of Mary helps you connect with God, or just the world, or with your own internal integration of spirituality, however words describe that. I know that it can be hard, but maybe there's an experience too that you had where Mary really was comforting to you or directed you in some way. But let's see, should I start with Casey? Go backwards?
That okay. Yeah, start with me. Um,
Yeah.
then when I went to college, I studied religious studies for my undergrad and my graduate degrees, and I took a class that Luann will remember because we were in it together. It was called The Theology of Women. And that's where I finally started to understand. We looked at cultures who were matriarchal. We looked at who Mary was, and she wasn't this genteel little, yes, I will say yes at anything you want me to do, God always. She did get there, but there were other, she wasn't as gentle as everybody says. And it just helped me as a woman be like, okay, I need to know more about this woman. And I came to the conclusion at the end of that class, and it has helped me ever since, is Mary, ever since we've been keeping track of history, we've always tried to keep God male. But there's always been this thread throughout that the divine feminine is in there somewhere. And I think for me, for the Catholic religion, it's Mary. Mary is for me, the feminine face of God. So once I could start to see myself in God through Mary, I felt much more closer to God. And that's sort of how that trajectory went from. So.
Lovely. How about you, Meredith?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that, Casey.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to think about it, is how it brings you closer because you see yourself. It's like a connector. I think for me, a couple of examples. One, when I was young, I was 5 years old, and my grandmother had died, my mother's mother, who was they always called her like Saint Marietta because she was so kind and loving. My mom was very, very depressed at the time. Well, I mean, very upset. I didn't really understand. I was 5 years old. But the story goes that my grandmother came to my mother and said, "Oh, Carol, don't be a scaredy pants. You're going to be okay." But I had an experience. I didn't know this till years later, that she came to me, my grandmother, through the window and kind of, "Mary, it's okay," to me. And I thought in my mind, I'm like, it's the Virgin Mary. Like I thought it's like Mary, it's my grandma Marietta. My name is Meredith. So there's sort of Mary in our names. And I remember profoundly, I can still remember to this day, that sort of sense of comfort and connection. And it was between myself and my mother, and we had this shared experience that we then learned about years later. Yeah, so that was super powerful. And then I think more recently, when my dad was quite sick, I found myself praying to Mary, kind of, Jan, like you said, that was just felt like the person who was the right, the energy and the spirit that I needed to pray to for support was Mary. So yeah, I guess I never thought about it before, but definitely I feel closer to Mary than God. If I had to like give them weights, way closer to Mary than God.
That's lovely. How about you, Jane?
Well, I can think of one of my statues. I have 2 statues of Mary in our bedroom. And one of them is a statue of the nursing Madonna. And I had years ago had sought out a spiritual director on an issue that I was struggling with. And at the end of our discussions and at the end of all of this, she suggested as part of my journey to consider getting something or having something in my home that will be a presence to me so that when I look at it, I can think of this journey that I had and a healing journey. So I ended up getting this little statue of Mary, of the nursing Madonna, and she still sits at my bedside, and I just look at her and I can, it's just a good feeling. It's so it was part of my journey. And with 4 kids, she sat there on my nightstand for many years until my youngest daughter said, "Mom, why is she sitting there? Is there a story about her?" And I thought, okay, this is the time to share with my daughter about Mary. And I told her the story, and she's like, wow, and so it was very cool. It was, and I believe Mary had a strong healing presence in my life. And so I have her there.
Wonderful. These are kind of connected questions, I think. So, and if you have questions for each other, feel free to jump in too, if there was something that somebody said. But yeah, I think you've kind of already talked about this as far as the spirituality of Mary and how it feeds your soul. Would anyone have anything more to say about that?
Oh, I was just thinking about that. Are we going to talk about the last question? To share an experience?
Share an experience.
Well, I just wanted to give a quick time of how I kind of told you how my relationship with Mary has grown. But I just wanted to give a quick story. So 15 years ago, my mom died, but before she died, she was in a nursing home. She was the youngest one there, and her mother was there as the oldest one. So they were there at the same time. And every night after dinner, it was run by Sisters of Charity. And it was a real small nursing home. There was probably 20, 30 residents. And after dinner, every night at 6 o'clock, the sisters would sit in a circle with whomever would want to, and they would do the rosary out loud. And while my mom and I never really joined in, we watched them. And during that time, that's when she would tell me about what Mary meant to her. And she especially would talk about the times she also went to St. William's grade school. And so they did a lot of hymns in Latin to Mary. And I found this CD by Beth Nielsen Chapman. It's called Hymns, and it's all hymns to Mary in there in Latin. And it's all a cappella, and it's the most beautiful thing. And before she died, about 6 months before she died, I brought it to the nursing home, and we used to listen to it. And she, when she was in pain or just so anxious, she would just close her eyes, and you could just see the peace of Mary just coming over her. It just was very relaxing to her. So, I am the 4th of 5 kids. And so towards the end, I didn't get a lot of alone time with her because she also has 10 grandchildren and sisters and, so everybody was in the room. So the night she went into a coma on Sunday night and died on Tuesday at noon. So Monday night, I was staying in a hotel, and just about 2 o'clock, I woke up and I'm like, I need to be with her. So I went down there and I went in and I put the CD on and just put my head next to her and sang with the CD to her those hymns of Mary. And while she was in a coma, there's part of me that sticks with, because it not only healed my soul and healed my relationship, confirmed my relationship with my mom and with God. It felt like that was the three of us coming together through Mary. But I also got this feeling that Mary was going to be there for her and they would sing hymns together. There was an overpowering feeling. Once she goes tomorrow, it'll be okay.
Mhm.
So that's sort of where I'm at with Mary now too. I'm still trying to incorporate her now, instead of in my mom's life, in my own life too.
Mhm. Wow, that's really, really beautiful on many levels, Casey.
It
Wow.
was.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It felt good.
It's almost like I wish you could play that music, Tammy, for the service.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so beautiful.
yeah. I'll talk to Casey.
What was the name of that again?
Beth Nielsen Chapman hymns.